Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this study or this session of moral lessons from the Quran. This is a short series that we are conducting in the holy month of Ramadan. And as you would have known by now, that this series actually relates to the moral and ethical verses of the Quran and the basic message of the Quran for mankind regarding morality and ethics is something that all of us need to pay attention to, although morality and ethics are ingrained in each one of us, yet we do need reminders periodically from time to time. And the Quran serves to remind us regarding some of these innate realities that we have been blessed with. Today we will continue with the Surah Luqman, the passage you would remember that we were studying yesterday, in which the advice and counsel of Luqman, the famous elder and the famous sage of Arabia, who used to live in Yemen, and when he was handing over his leadership of the tribe to his son, it is said that it was at this time that he gave these words of counsel and these words of advice to his son. And the Quran has actually cited him to tell the Arabs of those times that look how close is the message of Luqman to what the Quran is saying, particularly regarding polytheism. We know that the idolaters of Arabia had adopted polytheism or shirk as their religion, and that is why they were called al-mushrikun. And the Quran, by citing Luqman, has said that you are well aware of Luqman, and he himself, when he was parting with his leadership of the tribe and handing it over to his son, he had said to his son, "Inna shirka la zulmun azim," that if you commit this shirk or this polytheism, then you would be committing a great transgression. And so the Arabs not only were reminded of the fact that this polytheism has absolutely no roots in the ancient traditions of Arabia, but also some of the other things which Luqman passed on to his son are so close to what the Quran has said, and therefore the Almighty has actually cited Luqman in order to tell them how close the message of the Quran is to what actually they had already known through Luqman. So just sharing my screen with you regarding the remaining verses, and we were studying these verses yesterday. So today we are going to study verses 16 to 19, which follow the verses that we were studying yesterday. So let me read out the Arabic text before you, and then we will discuss it after also reading the translation. So the words say, Ya bunayya, innaha in taku misqala habbatin min khardalin fatakun fi sakhratin aw fi samawat aw fil ard ya'ti biha Allah. Inna Allaha latifun khabir. Ya bunayya, aqim as-salat wa'mur bil ma'ruf wanha 'anil munkar wasbir 'ala ma asabak. Inna zalika min azmil umur. Wala tusa'ir khaddaka lin-nas. Wala tamshi fil ardi maraha. Inna Allah la yuhibbu kulla mukhtalin fakhur. Waqsud fi mashyika. Waghduz min sawtika. Inna ankara al-aswati la sawtul hamir. My son, if an act is of the size of a mustard seed, God will bring it forth, even if it is in a mountain pass, or the heavens or the earth. Indeed, God is very discerning and all-knowing. My son, be diligent in the prayer, enjoin good, and forbid evil, and bear with patience any calamity that befalls you. Indeed, these things are from among the matters of endurance. And do not treat men with disdain, nor walk arrogantly. God does not like the arrogant and the conceited. And be modest in your gait, and keep your voice low. Indeed, the most hideous of voices is the braying of the ass. So you can see, my dear participants, how the advice and the counsel of Luqman is continuing in the next verses. And the first thing that is mentioned here is that beware of the fact that if something is done, and a person imagines that that thing is not in the knowledge of God, then he is severely mistaken. Because if something is done which is as small as the side of a mustard seed, we know that a mustard seed is a very, very small thing, it's barely visible. And the Quran tells us here that even if something which is as small as a mustard seed and it is found in any pass or in any place in the heaven and the earth, and people might think that it is hidden from the eyes of God, but they are sadly mistaken. God will bring it to light and then hold man accountable and people accountable for what they did. And if it was something which was done in defiance of the Almighty, then of course they would be punished. And if it was something which was done in obedience to the Almighty, then they will not go waste. It will not go unnoticed. So basically, this is one of the misconceptions which the Arabs had, and they thought that the knowledge of God cannot be all-embracing. How can He know things which are done in such a small proportion and done in the dark of night or in a secluded place, and there are millions and billions of people doing such things? So they had this doubt regarding the knowledge of God, and this is what actually one of the reasons which led them to polytheism. And they are being told that you are mistaken about the identity of God, you are mistaken about the capacity of God and the comprehensive knowledge of God. Because if you think that things are not in His knowledge in any way, whether they are good deeds or they are bad deeds, you are thoroughly mistaken. God knows all of them. And that is why it says that God is discerning. He has full knowledge of them. And this full knowledge of God gives us not only assurance, it also gives us fear. Because assurance for the fact that anything which would be of smallest and tiniest in nature, a tiniest act of kindness done could be something which we might think is unnoticed. It could be in our intentions, but you must rest assured that it is in the knowledge of God. And this produces fear also, because we should know that the tiniest of transgressions that we might commit in seclusion or anywhere would be in His knowledge. So the all-embracing knowledge of God which is brought out by Luqman in this advice, in this piece of counsel that he's giving his son. And indirectly, the Arabs of those times are being told that you are very gravely mistaken if you have this estimation of God's knowledge. So Luqman's advice now continues in the next verse, and it says, Ya bunayya aqimis salat wa'mur bil ma'ruf wanha 'anil munkar wasbir 'ala ma asabak. Look at this verse, or this part of this verse, which actually mentions four things in juxtaposition. It says, be diligent in the prayer, enjoin good, forbid evil, and bear with patience any calamity that falls you. So the first thing which is mentioned is that be diligent in the prayer. Needless to say that the foremost connection of human beings with the Almighty is the prayer. It is this prayer that we offer in the seclusion of the night, or in openness in the day, or the 5 prayers that we offer, the nafil prayers that we offer, which is our connection to God. We are in communion with God when we stand up in prayer. And one of the things which Luqman actually advised his son at this time was that be diligent in the prayer, adhere to the prayer, protect your prayer, be vigilant in its timings, be punctual, understand what you are saying. Because the word aqama, when we read this in Arabic, the word actually shows that it has a very comprehensive meaning. Not only does it mean that you have to be persistent in your prayer, you have to be consistent, punctual, and at the same time offer the prayer in which you are able to gain its maximum benefit. And this can only be done if we understand what we are saying in prayer. And one thing which makes this prayer very interesting for us is that if we create variety in the prayer, and that can only be created if we have knowledge of the fact and we are able to learn a lot of surahs of the Quran by heart, so that we can recite them in the prayer and at the same time understand what we are reciting. So by memorizing parts of the Quran and reading them out in the prayer, which most of us have given up, and whatever we have memorized in our past, maybe in our childhood, that's the only part of the Quran that we have in our hearts. Whereas it is highly recommended that we memorize as much as we possible, memorize parts of the Quran, moving verses of the Quran, especially the verses like these which are selected for our moral upkeep, so that when we recite them in the prayer, it makes that prayer more involving, more engaging. Because once you keep reciting the same surah over and over again, it becomes a routine and you tend to forget what it actually says. So it's all the more advisable. And at the same time, we also need to know that our prayer is something, it is a minimum amount that we can offer, and after which, if we offer anything beyond that, it would be highly rewarding, but it's not mandatory. Thus, the first part of every namaz, of every prayer, the first rakat, are the ones for which we will be held accountable before the Almighty. And the next thing which Luqman tells his son is that you must enjoin what is good and forbid what is evil. This again is a very, very important responsibility that every one of us have. And that is that whenever we see something or whenever there are circumstances in which we can actually convey what righteousness is, and the word maruf actually here does not refer to anything religious in content. It refers to the universal good which everyone acknowledges to be universal good. Just for example, justice, truthfulness, kindness, compassion. This is what maruf is. So maruf actually means those virtues which are acknowledged by every single human being. It is common, it is the convention for every human being. And munkar, which is its opposite, also does not refer to any religious munkar, so to speak. It refers to all those evils which are regarded to be evil by every single one. Thus, for example, injustice, to lie, to slander someone, to extort. All these things are negative traits. So munkar refers to those negative traits which everyone acknowledges to be negative. They are universally acknowledged. And maruf refers to the positive traits which everyone regards to be positive and they are worthy of being adopted. So Luqman tells his son that at the same time that whenever you get a chance to further the cause of righteousness, don't waste that chance. Don't waste that opportunity. Pick and choose your audience, but when you think that something can be driven home, don't lose that opportunity. At the same time, when people are indulging in something bad, and through your own influence and through your own effort, if you can make a difference, don't hold back. And then what is said is also of supreme importance in the last part of the verse, which says that wasbir ala ma asabak, that you have to exercise patience regarding any calamity that befalls you. And this is something of a huge advice, I would say. All of us are faced with so much every day. We feel as if we are down and out. At times, things are so beyond our control that we tend to lose hope. We feel depressed. We feel low, especially on things that come our way very, very persistently. It could be poverty. It could be ailments and sickness, not only of ourselves, but of our near and dear ones, which really have their toll on us. Similarly, there are so many other testing times that all of us might go through. And because of the fact that life is a test and these things can continuously bombard us, look what Luqman has told his son, that be patient, persevere, because this life is a life of test. And do remember that paradise is basically a reward of your patience. So therefore, we find this being mentioned in the Quran as well. وَجَزَاهُمْ بِمَا صَبَرُوا جَنَّةً, which means the reward of their patience is actually paradise. So remember, paradise is basically a reward of the patience we exercise in this world regarding the calamities which strike us. And if we are able to go through these and bear them with a lot of steadfastness, then this is what is required. This tests our mettle, no doubt, but then this is what is required from every believer. And then his counsel continues in the next verse. It says, وَلَا تُصَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ وَلَا تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا, which means, and do not treat men with disdain, nor walk arrogantly. So to show contemptuousness of others, to belittle others, to demean others, to regard yourself superior, and as it says, لَا تَمْشِي فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَحًا, to walk as if you are a superior person. Your gait reflects that you are a superior person. These are the two things which the Almighty, through the tongue of Luqman, has prohibited and prescribed. Says that don't treat other people as if they are your inferiors. Everyone is born equal. We have referred to this verse a number of times in the Quran, which Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min zakarin wa unsa, that you have been created from the same species of male and female. You have one parent at the top, and all of us belong to that same family. And if that is the case, there cannot be anyone superior as far as racial superiority is concerned. And the Quran itself in that particular surah has pointed out that if there is some superiority, then it is because of taqwa. And that is something which only God knows. So regarding people to be inferior to you, to treating them with disdain, with scorn, and with contemptuousness is totally uncalled for. And of course, this is another reflection of this is that we walk in a way as if we are as if we are gods on earth, which is of course something which is very, very reprehensible. We should realize that we are humble creatures of God. At another place in Surah Furqan, which we studied a couple of days ago, remember what the Quran says, that Ibadur Rahman al-lazina yamshuna fil ardi hauna, that the servants of the most merciful are those who walk on this earth in a very humble way. Their gait reflects as if they are humble servants of the most merciful. They are not arrogant. They are not people who are haughty. They are not people who regard themselves to be superior and regard others to be inferior. And this is the climax that we can reach, that we make ourselves humble, not only in our gait, but our hearts also are humble. And we always realize that we are human beings who can always err. And then the Almighty says through the tongue of Luqman, "Inna Allah la yuhibbu kulla mukhtalin fakhur," that this is, you have to realize this, that if you are being conceited and if you are not modest in your gait, then you must know that God does not like the arrogant and the conceited. Inna Allah la yuhibbu kulla mukhtalin fakhur. Remember, this is something which God does not like. And then waqsud fi mashika waghzuz min sautika. And you have to be modest in your gait. The same thing that we just discussed. Khatabahumul jahiluna qalu salama. The verse says, "Ibadur Rahman allazina yamshuna fil ardi hauna." Yamshuna al ardi hauna. They walk as in a manner which is very humble. So this verse is exactly telling us the same. Waqsid fi mashyika. Waqsid fi mashyika means that be modest in your gait. Don't reflect. Your gait should not reflect that arrogance. And waghzuz min sautika. Your voice should be decent. It should have that decency in it. And the most reprehensible of voices is the braying of the donkey, of the ass. So don't be indecent in your voice. Your voice should reflect that that kindness, that serenity, that sweetness. It should be as if you know that a person is talking in a way that is endearing him to his Lord. So with these words, I end my talk here, and I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. For the first question, I have Fatma. Fatma, please go ahead and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is that who are Bani Ismail currently?
Well, the Bani Ismail currently are the Arabs, and the Banu Hashim, they are still born there, they're living there. And you'll find them at times spread over in Jordan and in some parts of in Morocco as well. But the current Arabs which are living there, they are the pure Bani Ishmael. They are the Ishmaelites.
The ones who are in Saudi?
In Saudi Arabia, yes, in the Arabian Peninsula. I'm not saying they're confined to them, because they did spread out later on. So the Hashemite kingdom, for example, in Morocco, and also in Jordan, you'll find parts of them spread there. But yes, today, if you would ask any person, then the lineage of the Arabs, which has persisted in the last 14 centuries, being confined in the Arabian Peninsula, they are the Banu Ismail.
Rajni, you can go now.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam.
My question is that what is the fault of children born in a non-believer environment?
Well, I mean, why do you say that? What is the fault of children? I mean, what is the fault of adults also? Because you see, yes, I do understand.
People are blessed.
Right, I understand. You see, there is no fault regarding being born in any environment. You see, if you just understand that every person, wherever he is born, he has one basic responsibility, and that is to seek the truth, to find out what the truth regarding philosophical and metaphysical reality is, like regarding God, regarding regarding the question that where we came from, where are we to go, and is there any religion which claims to be a true religion? So these are some basic fundamental questions, whether a person who is a believer or the non-believer, or he's born anywhere. Whenever he grows or she grows and reaches a certain age of maturity, these are natural questions which should arise. And if these questions have arisen in the mind of people and they lull them to sleep, or they don't answer them, or they are careless in finding the answers, obviously then such people would be held accountable. But for example, if they embarked upon the quest for the truth and were
But
not
sir,
able to, yes, please
but
go
is
ahead.
it not tough for this person become Muslim as compared to someone born in a Muslim already? So why is it not the law that everyone does have an equal opportunity to experience and accept Islam from the childhood?
Well, you see, the more tough the test, the less would be the extent of accountability. The less tough the exam, the more tough would be the accountability. So we have to understand that as far as accountability is concerned, it would be proportional to the test. If the test is hard for similar circumstances, for similar people, and for others the test is not as hard, then the judgment will be also on that basis. And also, one thing that needs to be understood is that besides the fact that a person should convert to Islam or not, there is one thing which is common to all humanity, for which there can be no exception, and that is the moral understandings that we have, or the moral precepts that we hold dear to, like, for example, truth, justice, the conception of God. All these things, they don't require religion. They are ingrained in our nature. So if people who are born in a tough environment, in a non-Muslim environment, but they uphold the voice of their conscience, they follow the good that is found in themselves, and then they embark upon this quest for finding out any divine religion, and wherever they can, they are sincere and they are really hardworking in that, then I'm sure God would be treating them commensurately, proportionately, wherever they reach in that quest.
Okay, but suppose anyone cannot receive the message of Islam. In that cases,
In that case, his or her internal barometer, which is his conscience, and the good and evil which is found in our own conscience, which are in our own nature, that will be the basis of his or her accountability. Because even if the right message of religion does not reach you, the conception of God is something which the Quran tells us is found in human nature, that we are created. And secondly, the fact that there are universally acknowledged good and universally acknowledged evil, which we must adopt and must refrain. So, on the basis of that, conscience that we have, and on the basis of the intuition that we have, so we will be judged on the basis of that knowledge which is found within us, without resorting to the exterior knowledge.
Thank you, Rajni. Adil Qureshi, you can ask your question now.
So I have a one question related to this talk, and then a few others that are not related to that. So feel free to moderate me if and when required. Dr. Saab, in this current session, how did you arrive at this conclusion that one should try to memorize more surahs? How did you deduce that from these ayats?
No, it's not a reduction from these ayats. What I'm trying to say is that we have to make our attention more focused in the prayer. The word aqamus salah means that you have to concentrate on the prayer. This is one of the meanings, that be more focused in the prayer. So this is my personal recommendation, that in order to be more focused in the prayer, the more you learn the Quran from various parts, the more you will be engaged in that prayer, the more will be your focus. Because if you just learned a couple of surahs or a couple of verses and you just keep them repeating them over and over again, you tend to lose concentration. It's difficult for you to concentrate because you just have a very few number of verses to recite. But when you have a variety and you look forward that I have learned this surah today or these couple of verses today, and I'm going to recite them because I have already also made a point to understand what they are saying. And in my today's Zohar prayer or Asr prayer, I'm going to recite them when the time comes after Surah Fatiha. So you look forward to that. And when you look forward to that, your attention and your focus, there's a very high chance that that attention and that focus would be there for you. I'm not saying that it's guaranteed. What I'm trying to say is that this is something which makes your prayer, or it has more chances of making your prayer focused and more directed towards God.
Thank you. Rafia, you can ask your question.
Dr. Shehzad, I wanted to ask you that regarding my zakat, I want to give some zakat to Kuwait and Indus Hospital. Now, obviously, it'll go above the zakat I owe. Can I adjust it to next year, or the more charity you give, the happier Allah is with you? So it's okay if I just give it and leave next year to whatever comes?
So you have both choices. It's your choice. You can adjust the extra amount for next year, or you can just give it as an extra amount this year and regard it to be an over and above form of charity. So both are your choices, and you can adopt either one of them.
But doesn't Allah want you to give as much zakat and help as possible to the poor?
As I said, yes, of course, this is some of a higher recommendation, but it's not an obligation. We have to understand that there are certain things which are an obligation and other things which are left to your discretion. So this is something which is left to your discretion. And God has also recommended this, but he's not made it mandatory. The mandatory part is just the zakat. Over and above the zakat part is something which is left to your own discretion. You can spend it, all of it, and regard it to be charity, or you can say that, well, because of the fact that I might be low in my finances and there could be some untoward circumstances, because every person has circumstances peculiar to him or her. So the people could think that, well, I'm going to save this amount, the extra zakat, and adjust it for the next year. There's nothing mandatory about it. It's entirely your choice.
Thank you.
Thank you. Adil Qureshi, can go ahead now.
So, Dr. The word Akim is Salat, that I think sometimes is also being referred to by some people as establishing a system of Jamaat where people congregate together to say their prayers. Is that one of the accepted meanings as well, that essentially establishing a system of congregation?
No, not establishing a system of congregation. What I would say is that trying to pray in congregation is one of the recommendations in the prayer as well. So, like, for example, being punctual, like, for example, concentration. Another thing is that if you have a chance and a mosque is readily available, then you should make an effort and go to the mosque to pray. So, like, going to the mosque and praying could be termed as part of Aqamus Salat, but not that you're establishing a congregation. That is something else. You're just being part of a congregation which is being held anywhere. Prayers are being held in your mosque or anywhere, and you're just going and being part of those prayers.
Rajni, you can ask your question now.
So my question is about female messenger. Why in Islam is not there in any female messenger? Because maybe 124,000 messenger maybe, but from them it can be one or something else female messenger. But we have to say that maybe or can be. So why it is, sir?
Well, for this we need to understand the cultural background of the societies in which messengers were sent. These were mostly patriarchal societies. In these societies, the leadership of women in religious roles was generally not accepted. So the Almighty did not change this pattern, and he just went about sending messengers because the acceptability of a messenger in tribal societies, because this was the time when tribal societies were flourishing. There was no urbanization, and the way we look at things today, in which feminism has a lot of impact on our thinking, this was never the case in the past. So just do remember that at times things which seem very abnormal today were very normal in the past. In the past, it was an acceptable norm to regard men in a leadership role regarding religion. So this is something which existed in pre-Islamic societies, in all the eras of the prophetic period. And had the Almighty sent any women as a messenger, she would have been not accepted by anyone, because of the fact that the society, the tribal elders, they were always acceptable of men in this position. So I think this is not a question of men or women being superior or inferior. It's more of a question of the dynamics of a tribal society. So in all tribal societies, if you study them, you will find they were patriarchal in nature, which means that men were always in a position of not only political leadership, but also religious leadership. They were generally acceptable. So there were exceptions in the political leadership. There were times in which women led politically, but you'll find almost no example, or maybe there are few and we don't know about them, that women might have been religious leaders as well. So I think that we have to view this question in the light of the dynamics of a tribal society. In tribal societies, women were not accepted. And I think God just went about, instead of changing the whole dynamics of a society, which might have caused a huge uplift, because God does not actually interfere in these matters the way we think he should have. He lets things pass through the normal course and only interferes when it is essential. So I think what happened is, this is my understanding, that he did not change this acceptability standards of people, and he sent messengers in the garb as men, because had he done anything else, they would not have been acceptable in any of the tribal societies.
Sir, for this religious matter, but Khadija radiallahu anhu did business very well that time. So how it is possible that business, one woman can do business very well, and she did not take her responsibility towards the religious matter?
This is because, you see, doing business is one thing. It was something which was acceptable in the Arab society. There were women who were teachers, there were women who were traders, but women in religious leadership, this was something which was not, you'll not find it anywhere in history. So I'm talking about the role of leadership in religious affairs. For example, being imams, for example, leading up front. And what I'm saying is that this is something which is not prohibited. I mean, the Almighty could have easily done so. But generally, prophets of God who have to acquire this position of religious leadership, they were accepted in tribal societies only when they belonged to the male gender. So I'm referring specifically to positions of religious leadership. Today, for example, things have absolutely changed, and had the prophethood not ended, and the prophethood would have continued until today, maybe we would have a woman messenger as well. So what we need to understand is that the dynamics of today are entirely different from the dynamics of the past.
Okay, sir. I got it. Thank you, sir.
Rizad, I have a little supplementary question, the Rajni's question, that just because it has not come down to us from the riwayas and the oral history, does it not mean that women never had any kind of political role in the financial and political and social sphere? Could it be possible it did not come down to us?
So I'm specifically referring to being a prophetess of God. So obviously there are other roles which women have assumed and they have been accepted. And I still think that if there were matriarchal society as opposed to the patriarchal societies, because we do read in history that there were certain matriarchal societies in Amazon and certain other areas, although it has still to be established whether it is true or not. But for the sake of argument, I do think that if there existed those matriarchal societies in which women were accepted as leaders in the religious affair as well, I think we can easily believe that the Almighty might have sent a messenger of the female gender to them, and they were not reported in the Quran, because we know that the Quran tells us that there are a lot of messengers about whom we don't know, and the messengers which have been mentioned in the Quran are the ones regarding whom the Arabs knew in their history, because they were to learn a lesson from their anecdotes, and any irrelevant citation of a land which the Arabs did not know would not have made the point for them. So yes, this is a possibility, but as I said, that possibility is something which we can just hypothetically consider. All that we can say is it is possible. Whether it actually happened or not, I don't think we can ever be sure of.
Thank you. Rafia Khwaja, can have your question now.
Dr. Shehzad, I believe in certain Arab countries, a woman is allowed to lead the prayers. Is this not generally accepted that a woman can lead prayers? Would it be accepted in our part of the world?
There is nothing in the Sharia which forbids that. As I said, there is nothing in the Sharia at the same time which forbids a woman from becoming a prophetess as well. So today, if that is an acceptable thing, the Sharia does not stop it. Women can lead the prayers. They can lead men as well. They can lead women as well. Again, the question is of cultural acceptability and dynamics. If our mental state is such that we are able to accept women in this situation, that they lead prayers of men, there is nothing which stops them from the Sharia.
I think it's not accepted culturally in our part of the world as
Yes.
yet.
So the issue is cultural, and the cultural dynamics they play a role. Otherwise, if at any place this acceptability happens, and if women start to lead the prayers, I don't think we can object to it in any way from the Sharia viewpoint.
Thank you. Adil Qureshi, you can ask your question.
So there was a question asked yesterday about durood in the Salat, Dr. Saab, and I think you said it's optional, and you can obviously, there is a lot of benefit to saying durood. One thing that I've heard about durood is because durood is a prayer that obviously always gets answered and immediately gets answered. So this is why if whatever you want to pray from Allah, if you precede that with a durood, then chances of your prayer also getting accepted also obviously would increase or something like this. So essentially, this is why you say your durood first and then you say your prayers.
I think
Is there any?
there is no authenticity in this. This is just a commonplace misconception or a common belief. There is nothing to back it.
And just one last question that I had. I'm not sure if I can continue to go on. And if this is requires a lengthier answer, feel free to reflect that to something that you might have already responded to. So Quran is split into 7 chapters, as is mentioned. But however, the chapter 3, chapter 4, and chapter 5 and 6, the Bab 3, 4, 5, and 6, all 4 of them, as per Ghamidi Saab, refer to Inzar and Basharat and Tazkiyah and Tathir. So these are the core topics of all 4 of these chapters, 3, 4, 5, and 6. One thing that sort of confuses me is if the topic of all 4 of these chapters was literally the same, then why could not all of these be merged into one big chapter? And why were there 3, 4 distinct chapters?
This is because the topic being the same is not the same as the content being the same. They are 2 different things. So you see the passages that you would read in these surahs and these chapters, in chapters 3, 4, and 5, and 6, you'll find the content being arranged in a different way, because you'll find at times there are surahs which belong to the Inzar Am period. They are more lengthy surahs in one chapter, and in another chapter you'll find those Inzar Am surahs to be of very small, occupying a very small content, and the Itmam al-Hujjah surahs occupying a larger content. So you see, the topic is something different because the topic is derived from the content. So the topic can be the same, but the content can be different. And if you read those chapters more intently, you'll find that how in each of these chapters, in spite of the fact that they might have a similar topic, the content which leads to that topic, there is a lot of difference and there is a lot of variety in that content. And obviously this has got to do with the fact that if you pick up the Quran from any part, and you read any chapter, that chapter will tell you a complete story or a complete tale of the preaching mission of the Prophet Muhammad, whether it was in Mecca or part was in Mecca and some of it was in Medina, or whether a greater part was in Mecca and lesser part was in Medina. So the internal division between those chapters will inform you that this content varies from chapter to chapter, although the result would be that yes, the topic, you see there's a difference between content and topic. So topic is basically the purpose of the content, where the content is driving you to, and the content is something which is what you call what surah contains. It's more of you can say the subject or the things which are discussed, but where they move, the objective of that subject is what we call the topic. So the topic could be similar in spite of the fact that the contents could be different. And this is what has happened in these chapters.
You, Akram Bhatti, you can ask your question now.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Well,
So my question relates to daily prayer, like Adil Sahab was saying earlier. I've heard, I know someone actually, they do say that reading Atayat is not mandatory. Just sitting down is essential, but not reading Atayat. Is that true? Is that true?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you.
When we sit down in Qaeda and we read Atayat.
Yes.
So some people say that that's not necessary to read Atayat either, because that's
yes,
not in
that
the
is
Quran.
correct. That is correct. No, it's not the fact that it's not in the Quran, because there are many things which are part of the prayer. There could be things which are part of the prayer, but they are not in the Quran. For example, when you say the tasbih, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, or Subhana Rabbiyal A'la, or Subhanakallahumma, there's so many things. But what the truth in this regard is that as far as the utterances of qada is concerned, they're all left to your discretion. There are things which are recommended, like for example, at-tahiyyat or the durood or the dua, but they are not mandatory. So we have to make this distinction that these are not mandatory part, or these utterances are not mandatory part of the prayer. You can replace them with any other dua, with any other utterance.
But
so yes,
if they were recommended by Rasulullah, then they become mandatory to us, no?
No, the recommendation is of the nature of discretion. The Prophet says you can read anything, and if you would like to read this, you can also read this. So the nature of that recommendation itself tells us that this is one of the things that you can recite. This is not the only thing that you can recite.
But Subhan Rabbiyal Azim and Subhan Rabbiyal are in different words. It is in the Quran, but not the same.
So what I'm trying to say is that it's not essential that whatever is in the Quran should be recited in the prayer. That rule does not exist, because you see, the Sunnah is an independent entity than the Quran, and the Almighty can prescribe any amount of utterances in the Sunnah, and it could be independent of the Quran. It could be found in the Quran, it could not be found in the Quran. That's, for example, Subhanakallahumma is not found in the Quran. So it's not essential to derive every utterance that you say in the prayer, recite in the prayer from the Quran. That could be totally independent. And at-tahiyyat or whether anything else, the reason that it is not obligatory is not that because it's not mentioned in the Quran, but because it has been regarded to be non-obligatory or non-mandatory by the Prophet himself.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad, for answering such a varied nature of questions. That's the end of the line of the questions today.
Okay, inshallah, we'll see each other tomorrow. Khudāfiz.